So, I mean, a year and a half in, the president's come here urging people not to appease Russia, saying that carving up Ukraine means no country will be safe. Why do you think he has to make that argument still, a year and a half into the war?
Well, there are still some countries in the world that are not convinced that Mr. Putin has larger or more aggressive ambitions, which obviously we can't take that for granted. If we just walk away and we let him take Ukraine, and by the way, he hasn't changed his mind about these larger strategic goals. He still doesn't believe Ukraine should exist as an independent sovereign state. So if the rest of the world just walks away and lets him have it, where does it end? What does he go for next? Because that will take him right up to the eastern flank of NATO. That takes him right up to nations like Romania and Poland, and of course now Finland. And so that's an important thing we all need to be mindful of. And if people are worried about costs of supporting Ukraine now, as Ukraine fights for itself, think about how much more exorbitant the costs are going to be in blood and treasure if we just let him take it, and then he goes right up to the eastern flank.
I suppose a similar argument could be made saying that if Zelensky had been given everything he asked for at the very beginning, we wouldn't be where we are now, and this sort of drip of weapons to the Ukrainians, in hindsight, has been a mistake. Is there some regret in the administration that it's been too slow, the support?
I would push back hard on that. This has not been a drip. I mean, my goodness, the United States has been leading the world in providing arms and capabilities to Ukraine, and just this week, Secretary of Defense Austin was in Germany with another meeting of the contact group, getting in more than 50 nations to continue to contribute. What we've done, and it's important to remember why we've done this, the war has changed in character as it has gone on. What we've done is try to evolve the capabilities we provide as the war itself has changed. So in the beginning, everything was about Stingers. Nobody was talking about Patriot missiles or tanks. In the beginning, they were talking about man-capable air defense and Javelin anti-tank missiles, small arms and ammunition, that kind of thing. Because everybody was worried about that Russian advance on Kyiv. Then Mr. Putin can't take Kyiv, so what's he do? He starts focusing on the Donbass, which is all open farmland, which is why we started then focusing more on artillery. Then as the fall comes in, he starts attacking civilian infrastructure with missiles and now drones, and so air defense becomes more of a capability that's a need. You have to be willing and able to be agile and nimble in this space.
But surely, I mean, they wanted tanks months before they got tanks. They want fighter jets. They still don't have them now. You're behind the curve, aren't you, in arming the Ukrainians?
No, we're not behind the curve. I strongly disagree with that assertion. We are working in lockstep with the Ukrainians to give them what they need as they need it as fast as we can. And they've got all the capabilities, everything the Ukrainian military asked for this counteroffensive, they got. They got from the United States, they got from our allies and partners, including tanks and armored vehicles.
They've been asking for fighter jets for at least 6 months, so still don't have them.
And we are now working on training Ukrainian pilots on F-16s, other fourth-generation aircraft, and they will eventually find their way, of course, into Ukraine as fast as we can get them there.
That was a very passionate, robust affirmation of the president's values there, wasn't it, in that speech? Is there a sort of frustration that we haven't had the British Prime Minister here, the French President, doing the same thing in person, arguing passionately for the West to stay behind Ukraine? They've sent subordinates instead.
Well, I'd certainly let the Prime Minister and the President speak for themselves and how they view the General Assembly. President Biden thought it was important to be here personally because he believes American leadership on the world stage still matters. He also believes in the power of the UN, and you heard this in the speech, the idea of the UN Charter on sovereignty, territorial integrity, how much it matters and how much work can get done on sustainable development, for instance, from the UN. So it mattered a lot for the president to be here. He came here to work. And I would also remind 143 other heads of state are here too. So it's not like the whole world is shirking the UN.
Is the counteroffensive going at the speed you'd like it to be going at?
I think the Ukrainians themselves would tell you that it hasn't gone as far as fast as they would like. We're not armchair quarterbacking this. We're doing everything we can to support President Zelensky and his forces in the field. I would remind, though, that certainly in the last week or so, they have continued to make steady progress, particularly on that southern line of advance coming out of Zaporizhia.
I mean, some worrying developments in Nagorno-Karabakh, the enclave between Azerbaijan and Armenia overnight, renewed fighting. Is the White House concerned about that?
We are obviously watching this with concern, sure. And we've had discussions on the National Security Council just this morning about this. We're watching it closely. We call on both sides, obviously, to de-escalate this tension. We don't need to see this boil over into a larger conflict.
Is there a concern there could be another conflict conflict, though, not that far from Ukraine, also on Russia's borders.
We don't want to see the conflict, period, regardless of where it is on the map. And we've been very consistent in our concerns over Nagorno-Karabakh and calling on both sides to, again, find ways to de-escalate these tensions.